Imagine this. You're not in a battlefield. You're not a soldier. You're not even an accused traitor. You are a young woman shackled in the windowless dark of a stone cell, somewhere deep inside Vlad Dracula's fortress. The air is thick and stale, crawling into your lungs and clinging to your skin with the scent of old blood and damp stone. Your wrists are raw where the iron bites. The straw beneath you is crawling with lice. Every breath you take is shallow, each exhale clouding in the bitter chill. You can hear water dripping somewhere, always dripping, counting out the minutes like a slow, malicious clock. Through the narrow slot in the wall, the sound of boots echoes, measured, deliberate. You flinch with every step. On the far side of the corridor, someone is weeping softly. A girl's voice, or maybe a woman, old before her time. A guard snarls for silence, then spits. You huddle tighter, the chain around your ankle scraping the flagstones. You have no idea how many hours or days you've been here. You know only this: Vlad is coming. And tonight, he has chosen you. Your senses are raw, every nerve set to burning. Each clang of a key in the iron lock feels like it pierces your skull. The last time the door opened, you glimpsed the guards' faces, pale in torchlight, their eyes full of something between pity and terror. Now the corridor has fallen silent. Then the sound begins again. Boots, closer this time, and the flicker of fire along the seams of the door. Your heart pounds so hard, you're sure they must hear it. You're not alone in your fear. The others whimper and fall silent, as if dreading that a single cry might draw his attention. Vlad's shadow falls through the slot in the door. And then you hear his voice. Quiet, cold, unmistakable. Bring her. You think you know this story. Vlad the Impaler, the monstrous warlord who terrorized invading armies and punished traitors by the thousands. You've heard he was a savage ruler, that he impaled thieves and criminals, that he struck fear into the hearts of Ottoman invaders and rebellious nobles alike. But what if you've only heard half the truth? What if the worst stories, those whispered by women in the shadows or scribbled in terrified hands by chroniclers who dared not sign their names, were the ones history buried deepest? Because everything you think you know about Vlad's cruelty is incomplete. Yes, he built forests of corpses. Yes, his enemies fled from his name. But there was a secret side to his reign, one the textbooks barely mention. The terror he inflicted on female prisoners, the wives and daughters and young women caught in his grasp, punished not for war, but for the accident of their birth or the rumors swirling around their families. Here, Vlad's punishments weren't limited to the battlefield or the traitor's court. Here, horror became systematic, a daily tool of rule, a ritual of power and humiliation so profound it left generations of women silent, broken, or erased from the chronicles. Think Vlad's female captives were spared the horrors reserved for soldiers and spies? Think again. What happened in these dungeons makes the worst medieval punishments seem almost merciful. Imagine a world where the simple act of being a daughter, a sister, a wife, sometimes just being in the wrong village on the wrong day, could mark you for a punishment designed not just to hurt, but to destroy utterly, body and soul. The stone you sit on is slick with something dark. You can't see your own feet, but you know the stains are old, layered. The women before you left traces here. Fingernail scratches on the wall, tufts of hair caught in the mortar, stains that no amount of scrubbing could ever remove. You remember the stories your mother told, how girls vanished when Vlad's men rode into town, how families were made to watch as daughters were taken, how no one dared whisper what happened next. In the stories, sometimes the girls returned. More often, they didn't. But here, beneath the walls of Targoviste, you realize the truth is far worse. No one returns unchanged. Some do not return at all. Outside, the wind hammers at the slit in your wall. A single scream drifts up from the courtyard, high, thin, and quickly choked off. The guards are always watching, but you know even they fear what happens down here. Sometimes you catch the smell of burning, or the sickening sweetness of rotting flesh. You don't know which is worse, the fear of what's coming, or the memory of those you've already heard vanish in the night. But here's where the true nightmare begins. Because what you're enduring is not just personal cruelty. This is the machinery of terror. Calculated, methodical, crafted as much for spectacle as for punishment. Vlad's fortress is full of cells like yours, each one echoing with fear. And above, in the torch-lit halls, Vlad sits in judgment, his face expressionless as he listens to rumors. The woman accused of infidelity, the girl whose father failed to pay his taxes, the widow whose property Vlad wants for himself. Historical records don't mince words. German pamphlets printed in Nuremberg, trembling with the urgency of rumor, describe Vlad's chastity trials. Public spectacles where women accused of adultery or suspected of being unchaste were paraded before crowds, stripped, inspected, shamed, then punished with a brutality that made even seasoned soldiers turn away. Slavic tales written decades after his death still stammer at the details. How Vlad ordered mothers impaled before their children, or demanded that wives and daughters of suspected rebels be burned alive as a warning. And yet, in these same accounts, you see the cold logic behind the terror. Vlad ruled Wallachia in the 1460s, a time when enemies pressed in from all sides. The Ottomans threatened invasion. The Hungarian king watched for signs of weakness, and rival boyars plotted in the shadows. To Vlad, terror was a tool of power, and women, traditionally the heart of the household, the keepers of secrets, became both a target and a warning. By punishing female prisoners with calculated horror, he sent a message that reached beyond any battlefield. No one was safe. Disobedience, even whispered in a kitchen or suspected in a glance, could mean annihilation. But here's where it gets worse. Because Vlad's horror wasn't always public. Sometimes you're left alone for days. No food, no water. Only the sound of your own heartbeat and the knowledge that your name is already written in the register of the damned. And then the guards arrive. The keys rattle. The door swings wide, flooding your cell with torchlight. You see their faces, and behind them, the cold black eyes of Vlad himself. Tonight, he has chosen you. You're hauled to your feet, stumbling, blinking, dragged down corridors lined with iron rings and water-stained walls. Every step is agony. Every sound, every laugh, every scream, every order barked in a language you barely understand is a reminder that your life no longer belongs to you. Vlad's punishments are about to begin, and what you're about to experience will change everything you thought you knew about cruelty, power, and survival. But the true revelation is just beginning. Because what Vlad the Impaler did to his female prisoners would shock even his most ruthless enemies. And you are about to experience it, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, as the doors to horror swing wide. The corridor seems endless, but you're marched at a pace that denies hope of escape. Every stone underfoot is cold, every shadow full of silent threats. At the end of the hall, a heavy wooden door stands open. Torchlight spills across the flagstones. You're shoved inside, blinking, and you realize you're not alone. There are other women here, some your age, some hardly more than children, a few hunched in gray, their faces hollow with hunger. Their eyes dart to you, searching for answers you don't have. A line of guards forms a barrier behind you. You feel their gaze, hard, appraising, as if you're livestock. Above them, at the far end of the hall, Vlad sits on a battered wooden chair. His posture is relaxed, but his eyes cut through the gloom. The room holds its breath. You sense the fear radiating off everyone, even the men. Tonight's spectacle is about to begin. You are herded forward, the ring of your ankle chain scraping the floor. A steward announces the charge. These women stand accused of theft, of infidelity, of aiding traitors, of impure thoughts. Sometimes there is no accusation at all. The randomness itself is part of the terror. You wait, heart racing as Vlad's gaze sweeps across the assembly. His voice is quiet, but absolute. Let them be tested. The test is humiliation by design. You're forced to strip to your shift. The room is not private. Faces peer from the shadows. Soldiers, servants, sometimes even priests summoned to give the proceedings a gloss of righteousness. The torchlight is merciless, showing every bruise, every sign of suffering. Your shame is another instrument of Vlad's control. Then the physical punishments begin. Beatings with rods delivered with clinical detachment. Each strike is measured, not for rage, but for maximum pain. Some women are forced to kneel on sharp gravel until their knees bleed. Others have their hair shorn off, in ragged chunks, a mark of disgrace. You're ordered to bow your head and submit, to recite confessions whether you're guilty or not. The guards keep careful records. One by one, you watch as women break down, confessing to crimes they don't understand just to make it stop. Historical records confirm the horror. A 1462 account from the Slavic chronicles details Vlad's purification rituals, where women accused of impurity or betrayal were brought before the court and subjected to public punishment. The Saxon chronicles add, wives of suspected traitors were whipped, branded, shorn, and paraded before the village, so that others would know the fate awaiting those who defied the prince. In Vlad's world, pain was not simply a penalty. It was a warning, a performance, a lesson that lingered long after bruises faded. But here's where it gets worse. Once the first round of punishments ends, the psychological torture begins. You are dragged into a smaller chamber, the walls blackened with soot and old blood. Here, Vlad's soldiers interrogate you, demanding confessions, accusing you of plotting with enemies, of hiding secrets, of seducing men to betray their master. The questions come in waves. Who helped you? Who have you spoken to? Did you dream of Vlad's death? You shake your head, but denial is meaningless. Their goal isn't truth. It's obedience. You learn quickly that the only thing more dangerous than resistance is hope. If you try to plead your innocence, they laugh. If you cry, they mock your weakness. Some women, desperate, attempt to bargain, offering information, implicating others, trying to buy survival at any cost. It never works. Hunger gnaws at you. Sleep deprivation shreds your mind. The guards rotate in shifts to keep you disoriented. At any moment, Vlad himself might enter, his presence so overwhelming that your voice fails before you can speak. What you don't know is that these rituals are codified into Vlad's laws. Contemporary pamphlets, printed in German and spread across Europe, describe punishments so terrible no chronicler can fully reveal them. The language is careful, as if even ink recoils from the truth. But behind the veiled words is a system, a regime of decrees targeting not just political enemies, but women accused of the faintest disloyalty, disobedient daughters, rebellious wives, young women rumored to have lovers, all risked being summoned to Vlad's court. You are shown the proclamation, written in a script you can't read. A priest reads it aloud, monotone, as if reciting a prayer. Any woman found to have betrayed her husband, aided a rebel, or shown wantonness shall be punished by the stake, by fire, or by the blade, as the prince deems fit. The words echo in your head. The women beside you shiver. For many, this is the first time they realize there is no crime too small, no rumor too thin for Vlad to make an example. The punishments escalate. For those accused of infidelity, the stake awaits. A sharpened pole, soaked in pitch, thrust through the body and set upright in the courtyard. You are forced to watch as a woman screams and claws at the air, her body convulsing in agony. The crowd is silent, numb with horror, but Vlad's face remains unreadable. Others are burned alive, their ashes scattered as a warning. Sometimes you are made to clean the remains, an unspoken lesson that survival means complicity. But here is the moment that changes everything. As you kneel, trembling, the guards approach with irons, pressing the hot metal to your flesh. The pain is a white explosion behind your eyes, but the shame is worse. You see your reflection in a pool of filthy water, your hair gone, your body marked, your future erased. And you realize, this is not just about you. This is a warning to every woman in Wallachia. Your suffering is theater, your body a billboard for Vlad's power. The documentary record is clear. Letters from Vlad's own contemporaries, envoys, priests, spies, describe a terror visited upon women that will echo long after their bones are dust. A 1463 letter to King Matthias of Hungary records the executions of wives, daughters, and widows, punished for the crimes of their men. Even the Saxon town records, written by Vlad's enemies, admit no woman, no child, no soul was beyond the reach of his cruelty. Right now, you are feeling the weight of these revelations. You've just witnessed punishments inflicted not only on men, but on women. Acts so severe they were whispered about long after Vlad's reign ended. You can sense the machinery of control, the way pain becomes policy, fear becomes law, and you realize these stories were almost lost, buried under centuries of silence. If you want to keep uncovering the truths that history tried to erase, if you want to go deeper into the shadows of the past, to understand how terror is built and who suffers when power is absolute, hit subscribe now. You won't miss the next revelation, and you'll see why the darkest corners of history hold lessons no textbook dares to teach. But there's more. Your ordeal is far from over. Because in Vlad's Wallachia, survival is not just a matter of enduring pain. It's learning how terror is woven into the fabric of daily life. The next horror is waiting, and the story is only beginning. You are not returned to your cell. Instead, the guards lead you outside, through a winding passage thick with the reek of burning pitch. The sky above is a bruised violet, streaked by the first light of morning. The air is sharper here, filled with the chill that clings to the mountains. But even outdoors, the sense of suffocation is total. You are marched, barefoot and shaking, to a raised platform in the center of the fortress courtyard. Villagers and townsfolk are gathered behind a low wooden fence. Some avert their eyes, but many stare with hungry curiosity. You see mothers clutching children, old men with faces carved from worry, boys gripping each other's arms in uneasy excitement. The women beside you whisper prayers or nothing at all. You try to find your mother's face in the crowd, but the guards' hands keep your head bowed. The performance is about to begin. You are lined up with the others. A priest reads a litany of crimes, wantonness, defiance, failure to show obedience. The words spoken flatly, as if the crimes are self-evident, as if pain will set the world right. One by one, you are forced to kneel on the rough boards. The crowd leans forward, held by a spell made of dread and spectacle. A soldier brings a pail of lime and a wooden brand. You watch as the woman beside you has the mark pressed to her shoulder, the smell of burning flesh curling in the cold morning air. Your own turn comes quickly. The pain is sharp and savage, but you do not cry out. You tell yourself this is not happening, that you are somewhere else. But your body remembers every detail, the crackle of the torch, the rasp of your breath, the bite of the wood beneath your knees. But here's where it gets worse. After the branding, the guards force some of you to cut your own hair with a dull knife. You're ordered to face the crowd, your shorn locks falling to the earth as laughter ripples through the onlookers. You are told this is for your purification, to remove temptation, to break your pride. For others, the punishment is more severe. A girl not much older than you is lashed until she collapses, her back a tangle of blood and cloth. Another, accused of seduction, is paraded through the town naked, jeered at by children and men alike. But the most unsettling part isn't the pain or even the public spectacle. It's the way the villagers react. Some spit and cross themselves, muttering about cleansing the community. Others look on with grim satisfaction, as if your suffering is a kind of justice. A few, eyes shining with fear, dare to glance at you with pity. The lesson is unmistakable. In Vlad's Wallachia, a woman's pain is not just punishment, it is policy. The village absorbs it, learns from it, grows complicit. Historical sources echo this horror. The Saxon chronicles describe these rituals in chilling detail. Women marked with fire and blade, paraded before their own kin, made warnings for all. In a letter preserved from a Hungarian priest, it is written, "The people cheered as sinners were." Exposed for fear made virtue out of obedience. This was not isolated cruelty. This was a system, a society that learned to see violence as moral order. But here's where Vlad's genius for terror reaches a new level. Public punishment is only the beginning. The survivors are led away, but not back to their cells. Instead, you are divided, some to the kitchens, others to the sculleries, a few to the grim silence of solitary chambers. Each assignment is a new ordeal. Forced labor follows, hour after hour, day after day, scrubbing flagstones until your hands bleed, hauling buckets so heavy your back seizes, cleaning the refuse left by the very men who beat you. Even the smallest acts of rebellion are crushed. You are forbidden to speak without permission. You are watched as you eat, as you sleep, as you cry. When a woman tries to hide a crust of bread for a sick friend, the guards beat her in front of the others. You watch the lesson sink in. Generosity is a crime, mercy a weakness. The air in the fortress grows thick with suspicion. The women begin to turn inward, to guard their words, to see every kindness as a risk. And yet, Vlad's punishments are not confined to physical pain or public humiliation. The real torment is psychological. You never know when your name will be called, what new accusation will be invented, how the rules will shift from hour to hour. Some nights, a list is read aloud in the women's quarters. Those named are dragged away for further interrogation, or simply never seen again. The silence that follows is worse than screams. One night, you are summoned with no explanation. A new priest has arrived, sent by Vlad to ensure moral discipline. He speaks in Latin, then in harsh Wallachian, his eyes never meeting yours. He orders you to confess your sins before God and before the prince. If you hesitate, the guards threaten to drag you to the courtyard at dawn. The ritual is hollow, more about control than absolution. The women whisper afterward that the priest is as much a prisoner as you. His sermons watched by soldiers, his every word weighed for loyalty. The normalization of this cruelty settles in like fog. You see it in the faces of the village women who avert their eyes, in the resigned slouch of the men as they pass the fortress, in the quiet pride of the guards who boast of their loyalty to the prince. Over time, the women begin to obey without question. The possibility of rescue or rebellion fades. Vlad's lesson is complete. Fear does not just rule the body, it warps the soul. But here's where the last piece falls into place. The punishments inflicted on you and the others become stories told in whispers across Wallachia. Parents warn their daughters to be obedient, to stay invisible, to avoid the gaze of power. Girls are taught that silence is safety. Wives are taught that the prince's wrath is a force of nature, to be survived but never challenged. The legacy of Vlad's terror is not just in the wounds it leaves, but in the generations it shapes. You begin to realize this is no accident, no madness. It is the machinery of a society learning to accept cruelty as the price of order. And you are both the victim and the witness, marked, broken, but unable to forget. The next horror waits behind the next door, and you cannot help but wonder, what will Vlad do when pain is no longer enough? You wait for nightfall, hoping for darkness to offer some kind of relief. But in Vlad's fortress, the night is only a new terrain of terror. You lie awake on your straw mat, body aching, eyelids burning. The air vibrates with the whimpers of women, the distant clang of iron, the soft tread of boots moving with purpose through the corridors. Every sound becomes a threat. Every silence is more terrifying still. You learn to listen for the subtle cues, the shuffle that signals a guard's approach, the quick inhale of the girl beside you as she braces for what's coming next. Then, your name is called. The door swings open. You are summoned into a room you've never seen before, smaller than the courtroom, colder than your cell, lit by a single candle that throws monstrous shadows across the walls. Vlad is there, waiting. His gaze follows you as the guards position you in the center of the stone floor. You feel the heat of the candle on your face, the bite of the chain at your ankle, the deep humiliation that sinks deeper than any wound. Vlad does not shout. His voice is low, even gentle. "Tell me the truth," he says, as if you are a friend, as if this is a conversation instead of an interrogation. "Why are you here? Who taught you to disobey? Who did you betray?" His questions twist and circle, demanding not just confessions, but the surrender of your will. If you falter, he leans forward, voice softening further. "Do you dream of men? Have you been unchaste? Are you a witch or just a liar?" You realize he is searching for something more than a confession. He wants to break you, to carve away any piece of self that remains untamed. The guards watch, eager for a sign, a raised eyebrow, a flicker of anger that will signal the next punishment. You remember stories of women accused of witchcraft, of lustful hearts, of consorting with demons. Here the accusations blur together until they no longer need evidence or reason. All that matters is your submission. But here's where it gets worse. Sometimes Vlad offers a bargain. He promises mercy if you confess, freedom if you name others. You see the trap immediately. There is no real clemency, only new ways to turn the prisoners against each other. The girl who sobs and names her neighbor is still taken away the next morning, her cell empty and silent. The guards repeat Vlad's words, "Confession is salvation." But every confession is a sentence, every word another link in the chain that binds you. Historical records reveal the depths of these psychological tortures. The German pamphlets printed in Nuremberg in 1463 describe examinations of the flesh and spirit, so degrading that the chronicler leaves blank spaces in his report. Slavic tales warn of Vlad's tests of chastity, where women were forced to stand naked before the court and endure the groping and insults of soldiers as evidence of their virtue. If you protest, you are branded as a temptress or a sorceress. If you are silent, you are deemed complicit by omission. One night, you are woken by a guard and dragged, barefoot, half-naked, through the freezing halls to the upper chambers. The moonlight shows the bruises on your arms, the raw skin at your wrists. You are led before a row of noblemen, their faces obscured by shadow. They ask you questions you do not understand. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they whisper among themselves. You realize your suffering is not just for discipline, but for entertainment, a private theater of pain for the powerful. The feeling of exposure, of being seen only as a body to be broken, settles over you like a second skin. But the horror does not end in that room. When you are returned to your cell, the other women stare at you, trying to guess what you endured. Some avoid your eyes. Others ask questions in whispers, terrified of learning the answer. The division sown among you grows. With every interrogation, no one knows whom to trust. Some become informers, hoping for favors that never come. Others retreat into themselves, blank-faced and silent, their souls withering beneath the constant threat. The Saxon records speak of these silent survivors, women who outlasted their tormentors only to become ghosts in their own lives. The 1462 account of Russian envoy Fyodor Kuritsyn describes women broken of spirit, who wandered the villages like shadows, unable to speak their pain. The trauma is generational. Mothers teach their daughters to obey, to hide, to never be noticed. Wives teach each other silence as a survival strategy. The fortress becomes both a real and symbolic prison, a place where punishment never ends, only changes shape. But here is where the most disturbing layer reveals itself. Sometimes the punishment is not for anything you did, but for what you represent. Vlad's interrogations are performances, staged to demonstrate the prince's absolute power over the bodies and souls of his people. When no charge can be found, one is invented. When no guilt exists, it is manufactured. You realize the point is not justice or law, but spectacle, a living nightmare that keeps the entire region in thrall. The fear seeps outward, past the fortress walls. In the villages, parents whisper stories about the prince's hand, warning children not to stray after dark, not to question the rules, not to speak above a whisper. Vlad's cruelty becomes a legend, but the reality is even worse than the tales. The ritual humiliation, the forced confessions, the sexualized interrogations, none of it is random. It is a weapon, a system. Pain is not a consequence, but a purpose. Still, the story is not finished. Because somewhere, in the heart of the fortress, you sense that a deeper horror waits. One reserved for those who survive too long, who see too much. You wonder, if this is what Vlad does in secret, what does he save for the grandest displays of terror? The next dawn is coming, and you can feel that the greatest nightmare is about to begin. The days blur together, measured only by hunger, fatigue, and the shouts of guards echoing off stone. Time loses its meaning in Vlad's fortress. You count the women at sunrise and again at sunset, always finding someone missing. Sometimes you hear distant screams, or worse, a sudden silence that tells you another name has vanished from the roll. Each disappearance is a warning. Endurance is no guarantee of survival. Surviving, you soon realize, is its own ordeal. You are released from your cell, but only to be forced into labor. The work is endless, scrubbing blood from floors, hauling buckets of waste, carrying sacks of grain that leave your arms bruised and trembling. Sometimes you catch glimpses of other women, faces you once knew, now so changed by suffering they hardly seem human. The scullery is filled with hollow eyes and hands that shake with exhaustion. Every task is a test. A dropped plate or a broken broomstick can bring a slap or worse. But the labor is only a mask for something deeper. Each moment you are made to remember your place, reminded that your body, your voice, even your thoughts are not your own. You watch as the guards flirt with the younger women, sneering, threatening, sometimes demanding favors in exchange for a crust of bread. No one dares to speak out. You all know the risks. Even a sideways glance can be interpreted as defiance. There are punishments for everything and mercy for nothing. You see a girl dragged away by her hair for accidentally spilling water. She returns days later, silent, her face covered in bruises, her eyes refusing to meet yours. Another collapses from exhaustion in the fields and is left to lie in the mud until nightfall, as a lesson to the others. These cruelties are systematic, designed to break your will and erase your sense of self. At times, you are forced to witness horrors worse than your own. Vlad's men round up the troublemakers, women accused of muttering prayers in secret or comforting one another after punishments. You are marched into the main hall and made to watch as the prince himself pronounces judgment. The punishments are creative, always escalating, sometimes a branding, sometimes the removal of fingernails, sometimes something no one will describe even in whispers. The screams echo in your dreams long after the acts are over. But here's where the trauma lingers longest. Some women survive. They walk the fortress corridors with haunted faces, their backs bent, their voices barely more than a breath. These survivors are marked not just by scars, but by the hollow ache of everything lost, family scattered, children gone, dignity stripped away. Others do not make it. You hear, in rumors carried on the wind, of entire villages emptied by Vlad's men, of wives and daughters sent north as warnings, of mothers executed in front of their children. The survivors drift through border towns, Wallachian widows, broken and shunned. The documentary anchors are impossible to ignore. A letter preserved in the archives of the Saxon towns recounts the arrival of a group of pale women, hollow-eyed and silent, whose story was pieced together only through the scars on their backs. Chroniclers record that in the aftermath of Vlad's purges, lineages disappeared from the census rolls, daughters vanished, their names stricken from church books as if they never lived. The trauma is not just individual, but generational, a wound that infects the entire land. But here's where Vlad's horror burrows even deeper. The punishments he devises for women become local legend. Mothers tell their daughters to never anger a man in uniform. Old women warn the young to hide when the prince's banners approach. Better to run than to be noticed, they whisper. Better to be silent than to be remembered. In some villages, families erase the names of daughters from records to keep them safe. In others, women dye their hair with mud or walk with a limp to avoid catching the eye of the wrong guard. But the worst punishment is the one no one sees: the erosion of trust, the collapse of solidarity among women. The fortress breeds suspicion as a matter of policy. The ones who survive the longest learn not to speak, not to comfort, not to hope. Each act of kindness risks accusation. Each whisper risks betrayal. You become a stranger to yourself, your memories receding behind a wall of fear, and yet the tales persist. In the evenings when the guards grow lazy and the air is thick with the scent of smoke, you hear women whisper stories about the night Vlad came for my grandmother, or the day the whole village was emptied. These ghost stories are warnings, yes, but they are also the only legacy left for those who survived. The lessons passed down are always the same. Stay invisible, stay obedient, stay afraid. But here's the twist that binds the horror even tighter. You realize that Vlad's terror didn't just break individuals. It shaped the very culture of survival in Wallachia. His punishments became so normalized, so woven into the daily fabric, that even those who never saw the fortress carry its shadow in their bones. The horror is no longer an event. It is inheritance, a law written not on paper, but in blood. Still, the most horrifying spectacle remains unseen. You have heard whispers of feasts, of gatherings where Vlad saves his greatest displays for the most important guests. Survivors speak only in fragments about what happens behind those doors. All you know is that if your name is called, it means you have survived too long. And that, in Vlad's world, is its own kind of sentence. The final horror waits on the threshold, and tonight You sense the feast is about to begin. You hear the summons before you see the guards. A barked command, the jangle of keys, the heavy tread of boots in the corridor. This time, there is no pretense of order or justice. You're dragged from your straw pallet and marched through twisting hallways, past doors you've never seen open, past other prisoners who lower their eyes in silent dread. The night is dense with the smell of roasting meat, spilled wine, and wood smoke. Somewhere above, laughter drifts down, a shrill, unsettling sound that chills you more than screams. You are pushed through a set of double doors into a great hall blazing with torchlight. The room is filled with nobles and officers, their faces flushed from drink, their eyes bright with cruel anticipation. In the center sits Vlad Dracula, unmistakable even in the crowd. He wears his crimson cloak, his boots caked in the dirt of the execution yard, his gaze as cold and fixed as a blade. At his feet, a banquet table groans with food, but no one touches it. The real feast is about to begin. You are not alone. Several other women stand beside you, trembling, stripped of dignity and any hope of rescue. Vlad rises and gestures, and a hush falls. Tonight, he announces, we celebrate justice. The crowd roars its approval, but you sense, even through the terror, that the true purpose of this display is not justice. It is demonstration. Power is not enough for Vlad. It must be witnessed. It must be savored. The spectacle begins. You are forced to kneel in a ring of torchlight while Vlad recounts your crimes: disobedience, impurity, imagined betrayal. The accusations are absurd, but it doesn't matter. The crowd watches as guards bring forth the instruments of punishment: red-hot irons, sharpened stakes, buckets of pitch. The air fills with the stink of burning hair, the high keening of women dragged to the center and made to beg for mercy that never comes. And here is the apex of horror. Vlad selects one of the women, young, beautiful, trembling so hard she cannot stand. He nods to his men. Before the assembly, she is stripped, bound, and, before your eyes, impaled. The stake rises slowly, methodically, as the room falls silent except for her screams. Vlad does not look away, nor do his guests. Instead, they toast, drink, and laugh. You realize that this is not just a punishment. It is entertainment. It is a message carved in living flesh for all to see. The Pope's own envoy would later write, "No horror visited upon women in the East has equaled that of the Wallachian prince." Even the Ottoman chroniclers, hardened by decades of war, record Vlad's banquets of terror with a mixture of disgust and awe. In this moment, you understand. Vlad's power is not measured in armies, but in the ability to destroy hope, to erase humanity, to make the suffering of women into a tool of statecraft. As the night wears on, you witness more punishments, some public, others more private, carried out in alcoves and back rooms where the guests whisper and wager on who will break first. By dawn, the survivors are too weak to stand. The guards drag you back to your cell, but nothing is the same. The screams you heard are now inside you, echoing in your mind, impossible to silence. You have become both witness and warning, living proof that Vlad's cruelty knows no bounds. But here, as dawn breaks, something shifts inside you. You realize that you have survived the worst that power can inflict. You are scarred, yes, body and soul, but not erased. You understand now what Vlad truly accomplished. Not just the destruction of bodies, but the colonization of fear itself, the transformation of cruelty into a language spoken by an entire land. The fortress empties slowly, the echoes of pain lingering in every corner. As you look back on what you have endured, you see the ripple of consequences spreading outward, into the villages, the families, the generations yet to come. The stories of Vlad's female prisoners become legends, warnings, and sometimes, just sometimes, cries for justice that refuse to die. But you also sense something else, the beginnings of resistance, of memory, taking root in the survivors. Even in the darkest corners, there is the stubborn refusal to forget. And it is this, more than any horror Vlad could devise, that ensures the story is not finished. You came into this story believing that Vlad's terrors were reserved for traitors and soldiers. Now you have seen how even the most innocent, the daughters, the mothers, the wives, suffered unspeakable horrors designed not just to punish, but to destroy. If this journey into the shadows has changed how you see history, if you want to continue uncovering the truths that others have tried to erase, hit subscribe now. This is where you find the hidden stories, the warnings, and the lessons that textbooks will never teach. The final lesson of Vlad's fortress is this: power, left unchecked, devours everything: love, trust, and even memory. But to bear witness, to remember, is to resist. The survivors may be few, their voices may be quiet, but the truth they carry is a torch against the darkness. And that is the one thing even Vlad the Impaler could never extinguish.